All right, so today we are talking about big web projects, Andy, your favorite. They always end up perfect and beautiful. And tell me about your experience over the years since you've been doing this for a while with big web projects.
It's the most perfect web project ever. Beautiful. Uh, yeah, so I've been building websites for over 22 years. We started the company 22 years ago. I actually had been building them for probably 4 or 5 years before that, going back when the technology was nowhere near where it is today. And over all these years, it's been interesting, and I think most agencies do this. Is they're always looking for a better way, right? A better process, and it's evolved over time. I remember 10 years ago, we used to do a lot of Photoshop mock-ups, and you would create something in this design program, and you would hand it to a front-end developer and they would code the visual side of it. Then you'd hand it to a back end developer and they'd integrate it with a content management system, and all of these different things. And over time, we evolved where we actually moved a process where we were doing design right in the front end. And so, our designers and coders were kind of combined, and we would build straight in, and it would allow us to be more flexible, to design in interactions in a better way. And so we've continued to evolve, but the reality is, even over these 22 years, um, big web projects are challenging. There's a lot of moving parts, a lot of potential for things to run off the rails, and this is the reality in any project that's large. You hear people complain about IT projects that they're doing huge ERP implementations or this or that, and all of those need strategy. They need some sort of like visualization for how people are going to interact with them, and then they need technology behind the scenes. And so that's why you see big software development, ERP implementation, all these. The joke is always, it's going to be 3 times longer than you think it is. You're going to have scope issues, all of this stuff.
Yeah, and so what is the alternative if you don't want to do a big web project? What else is there? I think most people look at it and think this is just how you do it, and that's it.
Yeah, and just to add on to the large web project, I mean, the other that I think, especially in this space, versus those IT projects, is just the ability to have outcomes, right? If you're waiting, if you decide like, look, we are not getting the leads that we need, or we're new to market, and we just have something temporary up, but we need to do something that's going to produce, because all of this is about results, right? It's about producing conversions that are either signups, demos, sales calls, whatever it might be. That if you're sitting there and you've got a 3 to 6 month project, if you've made that decision, we're not getting the results we need better results, man, is that painful to sit there and wait those 3 to 6 months. Then you launch it, and there's still a process of time that it takes, because the reality is you don't just launch a website and those metrics just overnight change, because you've got to improve in search optimization where you're getting more traffic in. Even if you are improving those conversions, the reality is every decision that you made in that web project may not be perfect. And what you really need to do then is, after 6 months, is look at analytics, look at screen recordings of visitors, and make new improvements that, even if you increase the conversion rate to a certain basis point, you've got to take it up another level once you've learned. And so I think the reality is that the whole thing is painful, is that there's risk for scope. There's risk for mistake. You're creating this design and hoping that it will produce the conversion results that you want at the end. And then even once you get it launched, you still have steps to take to really start producing the results. And so
Yeah.
you asked about what the alternative is. Well, we kind of have dubbed it Agile Web Design, where we really talk about a data-centric approach, moving quickly. And really what Agile Web Design is instead of looking at it as a project, instead of looking at it as a full overhaul, it's about coming in and creating prioritization based off of different factors. So, one would be, this is our most visited page. This is a key step in the flow that people typically take to convert on our website. We make decisions that are intelligent based off of that. Where are the areas that we see as bottlenecks or things that we think are really holding up the end result that we want? And then we're based off of that prioritization, we're going to start making improvements to it. And so, the idea is that instead of these big overhauls that take months, let's start and break it up into little pieces and make improvements. And it's just a change in mindset. I think, there are a lot of businesses, the idea of like, oh, we need something new and shiny and we've got to like overhaul. But the reality is that just is challenging. If you go in and you look at rebuilding your house, going in and knocking it down and starting from the beginning is very daunting, versus if you go in and you look at folks that they keep the framing, but they go room by room and they, remodel it. And so that's a different thing. And you can still be living in the house. You can experience the quality of like these new areas that you've developed, whatever it might be. So I think it's just this really big shift in mindset of how you approach it, but it can be significantly better.
I think an interesting point is that bullet there that it says the focus should be on conversion, not design. And I think that's key, because when we think about website, we think of, oh, we want it to look great. And yes, you do, but ultimately your website is a tool to produce outcomes to push your business forward. And if it's not doing that, it's not working. So that focus is where it's the focus on conversion. Those, how are people filling out forms, booking meetings, purchasing, if you have an e-commerce site, so on and so forth. And that becomes much more of, the guiding metric to look at, as opposed to, does it look great?
Well, I think when you're doing these big web projects, the fun part is seeing a design, right? And it becomes about the design. It's like, this is what I see, and you have these feelings about it, and you make adjustments to design a lot of times based off of those feelings. As much as, trust me, every project we go into that I've been involved in, I'm like, step in your client's shoes, sit back. But the reality is that's very hard to do. And so I think by breaking it up, you're also shifting your mindset a little, that we're now approaching it from this page and this problem and moving someone from this step to this step. And I think it helps produce that mental shift of focusing on what is the very specific need here that we need to solve, or what do we need to improve, and how do we do that, and shifts it away from this conversation, I don't know, design mock-ups and that exciting process that then may not be rooted in science and be a lot more rooted in assumptions and emotions. And so it really, to me, reduces some of that bias, reduces the assumptions, reduces all of that stuff that can produce pretty things that don't deliver results.
Yeah. It when you likened it to the idea of like, remodeling a house, similarly, I think it's easier when you break it up, because the function of, the den is different from the function from the kitchen. And when you have the big idea of, hey, what do you want in your house? That's, oh, I want a big beautiful home that's, it's a big and looming, request. And so the big project, it's hard to define and understand what each page, each icon, layout, all that is meant to do. And you're moving, as you said, more into that emotional space of, does it look good? Is that, and so you're not making decisions if you're the person that's, the client looking for the new website. It's pretty overwhelming ask to say, what do you want on a website? Just big picture question. When you're breaking it up, you're able to think about function, purpose. What do we want them to experience? What do we want them to learn? Where do you want them to go next? And you could do that as you're breaking it down. So I think it's a great point that it's really a mindset shift. Now, let me ask the question. If someone is thinking about, they need a new website and they're like A to Z, they need the whole thing replaced. Do they need a big project to do that? Or can you approach it via this agile method and get the same outcome?
Yeah, I do think you can approach it with this agile method. There's a couple of things that I look at with this. As one of the things you do have to step back and realize is that websites are, pieces of content and imagery and visuals and these other elements, and those are really what move people forward. Yes, we talk all the time about the overall architecture, and some of these things are extremely important, but per page, to get someone to scroll a little bit further, to understand a concept, to gain confidence in the business, that is pieces of text and images, right? And so the thing with Agile Web Design is, over time you can keep improving pieces of text and images to do that. And so when I look at big web projects, the way I think of it is, start at a foundation and build a best practice site. We're kind of at the point in the world where, we understand a solid amount of best practices, that, navigation at the top of the website is most intuitive. Everybody knows that's where it is. If you move it down into the bottom right hand corner, you're going to significantly lose conversions and people moving through the site. We know best practices like that. Start with the main section, the banner, and here's what you need to present. There are some core best practices that I think you can produce in a site, that you take this big overhaul and you think of it that way, and you say, okay, well, let's determine our 3 to 4 core pages. Let's build it in a best practices way, in a very foundational but flexible and scalable model. And then we do that in a short period of time, and then we start iterating. We can iterate on those existing pages to get them perfect, or start iterating to expand from there, and then come back around and keep honing the text and images. And so I think even if you feel like you need a huge overhaul, there are paths to take this agile process and get the same benefits, and in reality, the better outcome, because you're going agile, and you're doing these short sprints rather than trying to, uh, what do they say? Take a big bite out of the whale, right?
Yeah. And you're getting feedback earlier on and more often, as opposed to, that 3 to 6 month wait before nothing. And then you're hoping that you're resonating and, across the site. Here you're able to actually see feedback from users. So
Well, I
yeah,
think that's one of the things, again, sites, if you're doing it with usually an agency or something, you are talking about a multi-month process. If you go this way, you're getting data early too. Like you were just saying, you're getting feedback. I mean, we do tools like Hotjar and Crazy Egg that will record visitors on the site. If you can get out improvements very early on, 15 to 30 days, and you've got those tools, by 90 days, where you would maybe just be launching the website, you've now collected a ton of data, and maybe made better decisions off the data that you got between 30 and 60 days to improve and make a significantly better result in the next 60 to 90 days than you would have if you were just guessing and kind of going through that process internally. So I really do think overall, taking this approach again after having done this 22 years plus, that it really is the right way to go about it, and we have the technology, we have the skill sets to do that. And so I think things have changed enough that we're at the point that this is the better route for folks, and they should really be questioning the idea of coming in and doing a big wholesale website project.
Yep. And if you want to find out more, feel free to reach out. We would love to have a discussion, talk you through the process, and see how we might be able to help you with, an agile website for your business to get some faster and better results. So thanks everyone for tuning in, and we'll be back with another nugget next time. Take care, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.